How's it going, and welcome to my guide on implementing the Arcane Brotherhood into your Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden adventure. In this video, we will be going over the members of the Arcane Brotherhood and how they can significantly impact the adventure and not necessarily streamline it as it is currently presented. I will be going into, of course, major names and spoilers and locations, so players that actually plan on playing on this adventure, do not watch this. But DMs that want added insight and some quick hints and tips, then go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. So here we are, the 4 members of the Arcane Brotherhood that have joined up on this expedition to find the lost city of Ythryn. We have Dazan, the Red Wizard, Velen Harpel, the mage from a prestigious family, Naz Lantamir, a personal apprentice to one of the highest in the Arcane Brotherhood, and Avarice, a tiefling who has sold her soul to the devil to acquire more power. All 4 of these characters have such unique flavor to them. They all have interesting backstories, they all have unique powers, and they are all extremely well thought out. But while the characters themselves are thoughtfully well built, unfortunately the execution of meeting them leaves much to be desired. Per example is we have Zan here. Zan is probably, in my opinion, the best in regards of meeting this character. The first time you see Zan, he dies, but later on in the adventure, you can find his simulacrum, and you can basically tell him, oh yeah, you're dead. Velen Harpel shows up out of absolutely nowhere to go ahead and give assistance to the players in their darkest hour. Naz Lantamir is unable to ever be found living. The only time you'll ever find this individual is when she is dead. And Avarice is currently locked away in a castle, which unless your characters are given reason to storm this castle, they're not going to interact with this person. So how do we go about giving hooks to these individuals and make them more incorporated into the adventure to come and not make it feel as railroading? Well, before we can go about incorporating them into the adventure, we need to understand why they are here in the first place. The Arcane Brotherhood is a conglomerate of mages that is trying to acquire power and fame and fortune, and they send agents out and go out all over the place. The Arcane Brotherhood sent out 3 individuals to Icewind Dale in order to find the lost Netherese city. They sent out Zan, Velen, and Avarice. Naz Lantamir was not originally sent on this adventure. In fact, she was never sent on this adventure. She just overheard this and decided to tag along because she is trying to make herself look a little bit better. Once these 4 individuals arrive in the frozen north, they make their way to Bryn Shander. They immediately split apart and go about trying to discover the lost city in their own separate ways. Zan decides to hire adventurers and try and find any information he can. Velen looks around for anybody that can help her in finding the Codicil of White. Naz Lantamir immediately heads over to O'Reil's abode and tries finding any piece of information she can. And Avarice meets up with other devil worshippers and gets their support in trying to find any information she can. But what if they didn't already go their separate ways by the time your players make their journeys into Icewind Dale? What if your party starts at the exact same time as they arrive in Icewind Dale, and your players can actually meet these individuals before they go about their separate ways? Your players can meet with Zan, and if they meet Zan, then Zan can say a couple of things, and a couple of days later see him get burned to death. And that would be intriguing, of course, meeting someone, and you might not necessarily be friends with them, but at least, on a, name basis, and watching them die, and then later on discovering a simulacrum of them. Building that rapport with an individual and have that rapport shattered could be really interesting. Velen Harpel, as far as any of the text is concerned in this book, she is just this floating entity that disappears into the mist and is unable to be found until your players need some assistance dealing with the dragon. How about your players actually meet Velen, and Velen goes ahead and says, hey, I'm looking for some strong people, but, maybe I'll wait a little bit and see what you guys are getting up to. And that way your players have something to look forward to and have a reason to go out in the world and explore. Naz Lantamir could be a very interesting character for your players to meet. She is a diviner, and she can go ahead and say some things in regards of, oh, I see you have a great future ahead of you. Oh, I know you're destined for great things. And she could even portent, oh, I know I'll be seeing you in the future, but she could be portenting her own doom. Because while she might be able to see the characters, she doesn't see herself, and she doesn't see that she is dead. And Avarice, you can have a blast with. She has 2 gargoyles at her side, and that is definitely a conversation starter. If you find her at a tavern somewhere and she's about ready to head off to wherever she's going, you all of a sudden see a woman in the corner and 2 gargoyles right by her side. Of course you're going to want to talk to that individual. That's intriguing. And it could be even more intriguing, of course, if you have someone that is a devil worshiper in your party. That could really lead to a rapport of, oh, hey, you know, me and you, we got something going on here. Now, your players don't need to meet all 4 of the members immediately. They can be petered out over time. But what can make the social interactions interesting is whichever one of these individuals they meet, they will go ahead and smack talk all of the other members. Zan will say, oh yeah, Velen's an old coot that just gets by on her name. Nass is just someone that looks to the future and never looks behind her. Oh, Avarice, you know, she's totally evil. Velen can say, oh, Zan is the worst of the worst, Naz Lantamir is a thief, and Avarice is clearly soulless. Naz Lantamir can say that Zan is an absolute scumbag. Velen is an individual that does the biggest taboo in the magic world and works with necromancy. And Avarice is just a power-hungry individual. Avarice can say that Zan is an impudent fool, that Velen is weak, and Naz Lantamir is such a shame that she wasn't even invited onto this expedition to begin with. So no matter which individual your players talk to, they'll all get some piece of information about all of the other members, and that'll really cement into their minds because, you know, whoever they talk to, they're going to talk to someone else and have that back thought of, ooh, were they just talking smack, or is there some sort of truth behind it? And you can twist that. They could be plainly honest and say some things that are damaging to their other characters, and they could be true. But at the same time, they could be a little bit vindictive and try and drive a wedge between everyone else and them. Something you should really consider when running all 4 of these individuals is the fact that none of them are any truly better than the other. They all have their own ambitions, they have their ideals, bonds, and flaws, and this is going to drive them to do what they do and try and get what they want. What they want is to find the lost city of Ythryn, plunder all of its magics, and claim the right that they were the ones that got there and none of the others. Each one of these individuals is self-serving, and that should be present when you are role-playing them. Yes, you can obviously have them be deceitful, and your players may not catch on to that, but you should always play their actions and intentions as that, self-conceited. So now that your players met one or maybe more of the Arcane Brotherhood members, how do you convey the reason for them being here in the first place? You can just be outright forthcoming and say, hey, we know for a fact that there's a lost city here and it's filled with magic stuff and we want it. And that will, of course, drive your players to some air of mystery in this world. They don't know what could possibly be in there, but they know it exists. If you take this route, then your players have something to look forward to throughout the course of the campaign and have something to build up to. Or you could go down the route that the book took, and in which case your players only discover everything about the Netherese city here and the Arcane Brotherhood trying to plunder it once they have dealt with the dragon. If you go down this route, it's more like the rest of chapters 1 and 2 where your players are stumbling across something again and again and again. Which if your players enjoy that kind of style, then absolutely go for it. But obviously some people want a bit more of a hook early on in the campaign. Some people may not even want to be told about it at all. Maybe you decide that instead of telling your players all about the lost city, they simply stumble across it without even knowing what it is at all. And that could be intriguing if you don't say anything at all about a magical city. Maybe the only thing you say is, hey, we know that there's something in the Ragged Glacier and it could be anything. And your players do the whole caper on O'Reil's abode, make their way through the Caves of Hunger, and then all of a sudden they stumble across a lost city, and then they're just blown away. And that's like some Call of Cthulhu stuff right there. That's awesome. There's a lot of ways you can present the quest to go to the lost city of Ythryn, and these 4 are just such great drivers for that. So I've recommended that your players meet with all 4 of these individuals. Another thing to put on top of that is I suggest that you come up with some personal little quests or some downtime activities that your players can interact with these 4 individuals with. And throughout the course of the beginning of the campaign, chapters 1 and 2, Your players can build up this relationship and this rapport with these individuals, and that will truly decide who their ultimate ally is for the grand finale. It doesn't only have to be Velen Harpel that shows up to try and save the day with the players and, stops the dragon attack. No, of course not. It could be anybody. Avarice could show up with a whole bunch of cultists at her side and say, hey, let's go kill a dragon. Nazlantamir could show up and say, hey, I saw to the future and I saw destruction if you don't come with me right now. Zan and his undead assistant Krintes could show up and say, hey, we need to save these towns because no towns means we're in trouble. And whether these allies survive the battle to come or not, it doesn't matter because throughout the course of their travels, they can tell the players all about the reason why they're there. They can go ahead and finally spill, hey, I've known you long enough, let me go ahead and tell you what's going on. There's this lost city, and there could be a whole bunch of magical items in there. There could be a way to stop the everlasting winter. And, with those motivations in mind, exploration, loot, and a MacGuffin to stop the big bad guy, that should be enough to drive your players to this adventure and hopefully build a better rapport with whoever their ally is. Now, while the Arcane Brotherhood members might be telling all the players this, and for the players that might seem like good intentions, that could be just, selfish desires. The Arcane Brotherhood members could just see these adventurers as a tool, which they could be using, which is probably more in line with their nature. They, for the most part, are evil, and for the most part, are intelligent. So they are somewhat manipulative, and they understand that the players are powerful and can get them to where they want to go. So throughout chapters 1 and 2, your players bump into these individuals, build up these rapports, mark up tallies with their relationships with these characters. And then chapters 3 and 4, essentially, combined in one, they meet up with their true ally who's going to be with them at the end. But what about all the others? What are they doing? Well, they're not stupid. They're going to go ahead and try and track the party. They're going to go ahead and make sure that things are on the up and up. And they are going to combine whatever forces they have, and they're going to try and sneak into the lost city of Yithrin as well. So while your players may have tried to make allies of many of them, at the end of the day, a lot of them are going to turn into antagonists. Whether they be outright enemies or just antagonists, that's really up for you to decide. But the thing you have to consider is the Arcane Brotherhood members are prohibited from attacking one another. So in the text here, we get this information that states open conflict between members is forbidden, yet members are adroit at finding underhanded ways to needle and sabotage at one another. So how is it that they are forbidden from doing so? Is there some sort of magical pact that they all have to seal where they physically aren't allowed to attack each other? Or is it more along the lines of once they get done with their mission, they get probed, and if it comes up that they attack someone, then they're in big trouble? I like the idea that every Arcane Brotherhood member has to give up some blood and all sign a pact and are magically disallowed from ever attacking any other member openly. What this does is if your players have one of the allies and they go up against one of the antagonist could openly go ahead and attack all of the party, but the two Arcane Brotherhood members wouldn't be allowed to actually attack one another. They just simply physically cannot because some magic prevents them from ever having the ability to cast a spell against them. But of course, there's always workarounds with magic. It could be along the case of, oh, you're not allowed to shoot a fireball at them, but maybe you shoot the fireball at the ceiling and all of a sudden icicles drop down and hit the wizard. Doing underhanded things like that can lead to very interesting situations, whether they meet up in the lost city of Yithrin or in the very caves of hunger. There's a lot of ways that they can manipulate the environment around them and try to harm one another. So while all the Arcane Brotherhood members share the same goal of wanting to get to the lost city of Yithrin, what do they do when they actually get there? In the text, we get information about Velen and Avarice going there, but we don't get any information really on Nass, of course, because in the book she's dead. And Zan, we don't get much information on because supposedly he's just going to be a simulacrum that's just sitting around the Lost Spire all day. In chapter 7 here, we have this nice little area all about dealing with the Arcane Brotherhood. But of course, it goes into far greater detail with Velen and Avarice. But man, oh man, is there some great stuff here. We get information on cultists showing up, we get information on the gargoyles, we get information on the fact that Velen and Avarice are going to do talks together. But of course, Avarice is going to do a big no-no and deal with Velen. So go ahead and expand on dealing with the Arcane Brotherhood in the Lost City of Ythryn. There's a lot of fun interactions you can have between all 4 of these parties. Especially if your players are trying to toe the line between having friends with all of them, and they clearly are all about to fight one another in some degree. Your players are going to have to try and play matchmaker and say, hey, you know, we like you, don't do this. And that can be a blast. But of course, it's far more likely that your players latch on to one of these individuals and defends them against the others. And that's a ton of fun too, because once again, these characters are all bringing something unique to the table. So whichever ally you have at the end, they will want something major, right? They might want the Staff of Power, they might want the Scroll of the Comet, the Scroll of the Tarask, or they might want even more crazy information that is found all around the Lost City. But of course, that is going to be something that you are going to have to decide if that individual gets their hands on, because man, if some of these individuals get their hands on a Scroll of Tarask, that could spell doom for the world. So with that being said, don't let these 4 characters go to waste. Bring them into the adventure early, let your players interact with them, let your players have some fun with them, because each one is a blast to roleplay as, and each one is providing some amazing exposition for the campaign and can get your players moving, instead of having it where your players all of a sudden get told, hey, what's going on, let's go right now, because that can be a little bit of a weird, stop and go for some people. So go ahead and tell me, how do you plan on running the Arcane Brotherhood? Are you going to allow your players to meet all of them, or maybe just a select few that you thoroughly enjoy role-playing as? Are you going to play the Arcane Brotherhood as bitter enemies, or are you going to play them up as tentative allies that are working together for a higher cause, and your players can go ahead and get roped up into that? Are the Arcane Brotherhood truly allies of the party, or are they going to turn on the players the first chance they get so they don't have to share their knowledge and power? Tell me all about it, because I want to know. I introduced the Arcane Brotherhood relatively early on, and my players knew that there was some type of MacGuffin floating around here. They just didn't know what. And in my campaign, the area is getting colder and colder, and they needed to find a way to stop O'Real. And eventually, when one of the Arcane Brotherhood members said, hey, we could actually go over there and uncover something magical, my players hopped on board because they needed to. They needed to find something to stop O'Real to survive. So what is your player's motivation for finding the Lost City of Ythryn? Is it purely for exploration and fun? Is it for magical power? Or is it for a way to stop O'Real's everlasting winter? Go ahead and tell me. I love hearing all about this stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. And I know so many DMs are going to do so many different things with the Lost City and with the Arcane Brotherhood. But unfortunately, not a lot of people are there yet as of the time of this recording. Of course, in the future, everyone's going to get up to that at some point. Go ahead and tell me. I love hearing this stuff. And if you love hearing me, go ahead and subscribe to me, because I'm going to be covering a lot more content here, and I'll be talking more about these individuals. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing a villain's voice on all these individuals to really flesh them out. And that'll be a blast. So stick around for all of that. Thank you all for watching, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.